Everyone to our third Director Roundtable, and for our April 9th Roundtable, we're going to go around again and just give a deeper dive into department head updates and what is going on within our city right now. Who wanted to start today's meeting?
I'll start.
Okay.
Saturday, we had a busy day. The volunteer fire department down in Barnwell, they kicked off at 10 o'clock, and I went down for a little while, and then our fire department here started off at 2 p.m. and it ended at 10. I was there for about an hour or so. Also on Saturday, the Optimist Club every year, Perdido, gives out the Law Enforcement Officer of the Year, and we had from the police department, we had recognized one of our officers, Brett Dahlman, and Lieutenant Hollandhead had already also been nominated by someone, and she ended up getting the Officer of the Year. So that is a very big thing to get this. You have to do something very special, and from what I understand, I got a call. I was headed to a funeral service at that time on Saturday night. Got a call that Lieutenant Hollandhead had received this award, and I was asked, did I know anything about it, and I said I didn't even much know she was nominated. But what it was for was a case that she had worked on, and this subject was found guilty, and it was a very hard case to prove. So we all are very proud of her. We're also very proud of Officer Brett Dahlman. Usually it's one of two people from every department in Baldwin County that's that the Optimist Club they recognize, and then they get together and pick. This week is also National Public Telecommunication Week, and so if you see any of the dispatchers, just tell them thank you, appreciate the job that they're doing. We are very proud of them also, and so that's the end of my report.
Mayor, one of the things that we've been working on, if y'all take one of those and pass it on, and you're aware of this and some of the others here around the table where it is, as you know, the city operates and has the benefit of having our own C&D permitted landfill at the main campus of Public Works and Public Utilities down on South Section Street. That's a great benefit, but as we've gone through this last permit renewal, it has further let us be conscientious and aware that we are starting to consume the remaining capacity of that facility. And at current rates and current growth rates, realistically, we could be closing that out within this next decade. One of the biggest challenges that we've been dealing with, which was brought to your attention, was that we have a real issue with individuals who may possess a decal, whether it is validly, they have validly possessed it, or by some other means, that will bring large volumes of construction debris to the drop-off and want to put it in the landfill. And especially when it's one individual who in a morning's time brings 5 tilt trailer loads within hours of each other, that there's pretty good suspicion that is not coming from their personal residence.
Right.
And it's kind of widely known that there's a lot of folks that are in the contracting business who are residents of Fairhope, but they take that opportunity because they possess a decal to bring debris that is coming from a construction site that they're managing or working on. And one of the things that you had requested before we start enforcing very to the letter of the law, the ordinance in hand, was to go through an education and outreach program. This started, and just so you know, there's a couple sections of our rubbish and solid waste ordinance. One, it's very clear in section 7-123, no owner, builder, contractor, general contractor, subcontractor, material man shall dispose of any construction site waste, rubbish, trash, solid waste, and or debris in the municipal landfill. And furthermore, in section 7-124, it is the responsibility of every owner, building contractor, general contractor, subcontractor, material man working on a construction site in the city limits or in the police jurisdiction of the city to to dispose of said construction site rubbish, trash, solid waste, and/or debris at their own expense at the county landfill or another landfill of their choice, but said waste shall not be disposed in the municipal landfill. And that ordinance has actually been on the books since 1994. And I will say that we would probably have been lax in enforcing that ordinance. And with the understanding that, you asked us to do several things. One, we reviewed all the appropriate ordinances back in April of 2017 and made a findings of facts and presentation to you. And you requested that we work to eliminate the commercial construction site waste from the landfill that's coming in through drop-off. And prior to that, launch a public education and notice outreach, which we proceeded to do. In May through July of 2017, we developed a flyer featuring the key ordinances for the landfill use, and we distributed it at the landfill gate, meaning every person that came through got a copy of, hey, just so you know, here's what the rules specifically say. We made sure that we talked about it on the Get to Know Public Works radio program that was the first Wednesday of the month. And we got help with doing some social media highlights and what is the utilization of that landfill for residents. And in addition, Public Works staff presented landfill ordinance review to the City Council work session and received the council support in enforcing those landfill ordinances. We completed the flyer program after 6 months and completed that residential campaign. And we feel like that all landfill visitors have been informed of the ordinances governing the landfill use. So our goal is that our launch date for applying the ordinances as written is going to be June 1, 2018. And understand, if a customer of ours who lives at a residence tears out a little sheetrock, they can put it right out there on the curb, and we're going to pick it up once a week. So we're not denying them construction site debris. The ordinance specifically says you as an individual will not bring it into the landfill. So we as your service provider, so we're not denying anybody the rightful service. If you do a little work on your house and you have some material, you put it out on your pickup day and we're going to come pick it up. We're going to post signage starting the 1st of May at the gate in the guardhouse and really try to make sure everybody has 30 days that, hey, this is really, really going to come into effect. And we're also going to make sure code enforcement is on notice of any problems and that type of thing. We're going to be training our folks. I think the biggest thing, and my memo kind of covers it, my expectation is that we shall respond to everybody that comes to us in a polite and professional manner, and note that any attempt to drop off commercial residential construction site waste to the municipal landfill will be politely refused. And the gate attendant is directed that they're to give them a copy of this memo. This is a draft. And also this memo lets them know that if they would like to discuss it further, it has Dale, who is the solid waste supervisor, Arthur, who is the assistant director, and myself, cell phone numbers on here. And we'll be glad to explain to them why we can't accept that material. And I just did through this remind my folks that, be mindful that we're starting to enforce an ordinance that has been unenforced for a long time. We must be persistent yet polite, and we must be empathetic when dealing with those that have enjoyed a privilege that now is going to be no longer available. And hopefully, after some consistencies there, this problem will be put to bed. We're very fortunate that our county has a rigorous, commercially available landfill. And, they take all comers, and it's not terribly expensive, but that's how it needs to be done, because a contractor should be included in his prices the cost of the disposal of the construction debris.
Absolutely.
And I'm pretty sure they probably are, and if they can get somebody to take it for free, that's in their benefit, but frankly, that's why we have the commercial landfills that we do.
Richard, what about the people that, when the gates left open, people were going in at various hours?
Well,
unattended?
And that's something that we've all internally have talked about, and we haven't come to a perfected conclusion, but we're going to have to be a little bit better gate minders ourselves, because sometimes that gate does stay open when there's not an attendant at the gate, and that is an opportunity for abuse. But that is an opportunity that we, as a collective body that use that facility, are going to have to address. In a perfect world, We could, if we had an electronic gate.
I think that's what we need to look
that
into.
closed at 4 o'clock, and then you used a key card to open and close it from after hours, that would be ideal. Because I will tell you, some of the little part-time people, and even your strapping public works director, it is an effort to pull that gate closed.
It needs to be a different day, yeah,
so-
for sure. But recycled too, we want to still encourage.
Oh, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
We do need something that's easy to,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I do want our citizens to be aware that we're not cutting off any service. Drop-off is still going to be available. Your curbside is weekly, every week of the year. The thing is that we want to preserve this resource for as long as we can. And if we continue to take the volume of what we believe is commercially generated waste and debris, we're taking a resource from our
No
citizens
question
away.
about it.
So that is to not deny any citizen anything, it's to preserve a service to the citizens for as long as possible. Because when the day comes that we can't maintain a landfill in-house, that cost is going to get passed on to the citizen. Because then we will have to transport it to the county's landfill, and we will have to pay those tipping fees. So that's kind of been the big thing that we're working on and going to be rolling out
Appreciate
coming
you
up.
pushing this forward, because it has been definitely a big concern. What about situations where, if we were able to take this a step further, and that's what we're working on, is to, instead of tying everything to a sticker that really is not a way to enforce something, but tying it to a driver's license, that's another step, in technology that we're trying to move forward, not just for the landfill, but for the beach, rec, tennis, all of our city benefits that citizens inside the city limits will benefit from with a lower rate or free.
And Mayor, I would be 100% in favor of that technology, because one thing that I understand is from that magnetic strip, that with the software app, that it would know the address. It would, and I know that it's easy in like Google Earth is to have a boundary for the city limits, and it'll instantly know whether you're in the city limits or not, given
Right.
that address. And then the other thing is the gate attendant could at least observe what the material is, pull down a drop-down menu in the app and describe, is it,
Right.
household goods, is it white goods, is it scrap metal,
Recycle.
is it,
Anything,
whatever.
yeah.
And frankly, at the end of a year cycle, if we have a citizen has brought us an estimated 100 tons of materials, we probably can assume that there may be an opportunity for abuse there.
Exactly.
Or if we have a citizen that's only been there one time, but it was a big load, then we can say, okay, we understand. They've done a heavy spring cleaning or whatever, and they want to get it out of there. So I think that would make life easier.
Absolutely.
And it would give us a tracking ability to know, just what our rates truly are.
Right, and it will be kind of a supplemental system, because right now Munis doesn't really do it, but we can take an address and upload it, that system every night with, updated information with an address that ties to even a garbage account. That might even be easier. We know if your garbage is picked up, you're inside the city limits.
Sure.
So anyway, that's, we're looking into as well. So it's not just with landfill, but all of our city services are going to the people that need to benefit from it. So thank you.
And absolutely, thank you.
From the planning department, we had a healthy agenda at the last planning commission meeting, which was Monday night. We had several projects. Some were inside the corporate limits, some were in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. We had one that was in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, but in the county zoning area of Montrose, which was an interesting kind of dynamic there. But we went through it very well, and I believe the planning commission did a very good job, and I want to commend them for their effort. This is a voluntary board with the planning commission. It's not always fun. People there are happy, sometimes they're unhappy, and so I just want to thank them for their service, because it's very important we have people like that on our planning commission for the city. It's a thankless job, difficult job, but I think they do it very well. As we all know, when you make decisions that affect development, those are permanent decisions, or permanent for many years. They take their job very seriously, and I'm appreciative of that. And with that, I will cede my time to Sherry Lee for the presentation, so I'll stop there.
Thank you, and I agree. It is sometimes very controversial too, but I thank you for making it a lot smoother process, so.
You're welcome.
I wanted to thank also Richard Peterson because he serves on the planning commission.
But if I can say something real quick, I'll be brief. You know, the planning is a multifaceted. We have the planning portion of it, but also we rely very heavily on Richard Peterson for the utilities, because planning and utilities go hand in hand, and also Richard Johnson with the stormwater and the public roads and those kind of things. So we're more facilitators where we're working with this group here, and I'm very appreciative of them too and their expertise and their dedication. It makes our job a lot easier. And then, of course, the staff and the planning department, which have done a great job. So I just want to commend
A lot
them.
smoother.
It's certainly a group effort and a team attitude. You know, we have projects that are going on right now. We're working with Economic Development and Sherry Lee on some of those projects, which is a part of the team as well. And I think when everybody works together and gets along and likes one another, I think that it goes much more smoothly, and really, I think makes the process very smooth internally, but hopefully smooth externally for external clients like the development community and the home buyers and so forth, because I think
A lot
with
of compliments on it. So.
with that, I think it shows you have most people want to be stable in the development process. They want predictability and stability, and that's what we're hoping to achieve. So you know that no matter when you come in, it's consistent and it's going to be a stable process. It won't change depending on who's here, what have you. It will be the same. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for all that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm done.
And now we're going to go into the Fairhope pedestrian safety
Do you
and
wanna do that now?
wayfinding report.
Are y'all okay with
Presentation.
that if we go?
Oh, certainly.
I'm hoping that it doesn't. I'm sure this is on. Okay, so hopefully this is up on the screen now. We received a grant through the MPO for a planning study for downtown pedestrian safety and wayfinding. It was one of the big concerns when I got here. And so this process, I just want to say, most of us, so Wayne and myself, we've been here, about 13 months. And putting this together has been kind of exciting because we can see how everything it's coming to fruition. And I know the public hasn't necessarily seen anything come out on the ground yet, but you'll see what's coming. So this PL study paid for a couple consultants to come together and work with us in a steering committee that was made up of the Downtown Fairhope Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, a few city staff, the MPO, BRATS, the Parking Authority, some other merchants. And then this was the steering committee, but there were several different groups also involved. This was a week-long process, and we worked all day, every day, and a couple nights too on this. So it was a pretty deep process. So the next slide, this is where we started. We started with identifying what Fairhope is in terms of, from a planning perspective. I'll let Wayne speak to that
Sure,
part.
and what you have on the screen right now is just basically a urban to rural transect. As you can see from the screen, you have T6, which would be like downtown Mobile or any big downtown area, and it migrates and transitions out to T1, which is a rural area. And this is pretty typical. If you think about driving through the countryside coming into a city, you'll go through all these T-zones, they call them, just basically transitional areas and what you'll see is a changing character of the landscape as you get closer to the city. And this is a planning tool that is used throughout the country. From this, you will have a coding project, which this would normally accompany, where you would code parts of your city to certain zones. A T5 for downtown Fairhope would be a T5, and T4. As you get away from the city center, you start seeing this change in landscape and a change in intensity, a change of the character. That's all it is. It's a good planning tool. And the Fairhope ped sheds, a lot of these T-zones and so forth, it's based on a neighborhood, a quarter-mile radius, which is about a 5-minute walk. That's typical. A like you would find in any kind of urban planning tool, and that would help define the neighborhood, help define the walkability of a town. Most people have no problem walking about a quarter of a mile, which is, again, 5-mile walk to get to places. And so what you want to do is locate the downtown areas that are considered in walkable areas. As you can see from the screen here, this is the new CBD, Central Business District expansion. And what we try to do is ensure that the vast majority of this CBD was in a walkability zone.
So this is really the area we focused on. Here's the expansion. And so this study really focused on the pink area. So that's our CBD as it is now. And so some of the things that came out of the study, some recommendations, and then Richard Johnson, I'm going to have Richard talk a little bit about this too. But one of the things, so our consultants were Christian Preuss and Rick Hall. And Rick Hall is a transportation engineer and a planner, and he's very well known. We were very fortunate to have him. Some of the things that, made us a little bit uncomfortable in the steering committee were things like this slide here. So you're looking at Section Street at Fairhope Avenue, and you see the delivery truck parked in the middle and the bus trying to pass. And, I immediately, for me, I thought this is a dangerous situation. But Rick pointed out that this is actually not a bad situation to have, because it's a traffic calming measure or system without trying. So you have to slow down. You can't really fly by. However, he did recommend the safety strip. And do you want to talk about this, Richard, a little bit?
Yes, certainly the idea is that there's no doubt the downtown business district has to have the availability for the trucks that bring the goods that allow them to do their business. So you can't make the use of the roadway so restrictive that a business owner can't take deliveries of the goods that they need to stay in business. And so the idea is that there is a way to continue to use the full width of the road, but while incorporating in that width a calming infrastructure that can be aesthetically pleasing, that can give some texture and visual appeal to downtown, while still allowing room for the big truck to make its turns and its movements, because we just got to have them until Amazon can fly it in. It's going to come on a rubber-tired truck. So imagine if that center lane on Section Street was made with a heavily textured cobble. What happens is that when the road is in a free-flow condition and you have a relatively restricted through lane, if a car is not behaving or not paying attention and they get over on that cobble, they're going to get a very tactile feedback, and it's going to cause them to slow down and get back in their lane. But yet it doesn't prevent the truck from using it as an unloading zone, or if it has to move over to make a wide turn, it is still a surface that at low speeds is very, very serviceable. And this is one of those best practices that have come about that you're starting to see there. I think they've been employed in certain areas of Montgomery, our state's capital, and some other areas. Plus, it's a lot more attractive than asphalt, and it kind of gives you a sense of that there is a landscaped or hardscape median when there really isn't a median there. It's the same level as the driving surface, but it gives you that visual delineation and look, and that is something that can be used in several of our 3-lane sections of our central business district.
And you can see in the picture there, you have people using it, like you said, a pedestrian island when they cross. But
If I could add too, this is much akin to a rumble strip on the highway. If you've ever gone off the edge of it, but it alerts you and you're in, hey, I'm not in the right place. But Richard, am I correct to assume this would not take the place of turn lanes? The turn lanes will still be there, correct?
Correct, and you can even see, I think in the bottom center picture, you see that it tapers in to provide for that turn lane to
Right.
stay in asphalt. So no, the turn lane will still be there at the intersections. It is in those areas between the tapers of the turn lanes that you would employ this mechanism.
But Chief probably knows, we do have people that try to pass in that middle lane, and it is dangerous for pedestrians and other vehicles. So this will hopefully alleviate that, because it's uncomfortable, as you said, Richard, for
If you
people
go
to
up
pass.
to Trevino, their entrance is made out of the cobblestone.
Slows you down. So that's
Yeah,
the intention of that.
Turn lanes are considered scare lanes some places when you got this open lane, don't know where it's going, but we
That's
call them
right.
scare lanes.
So another recommendation was these mid-block neck downs, they're called. And this is a place where pedestrians can cross safely. You can see that they jut out into the lane a little bit so that drivers can easily see the pedestrians crossing. We were talking and we presented to the downtown merchants last week, and we're talking about how scary it is even when, or especially when a mother is pushing a stroller and you can't see anyone coming out. So this would alleviate that. Is there anything else?
Yeah, the
about
big
these?
thing is also, it pushes the parallel parking a little bit back from the crossing so that you open up as much sight distance, so the car has a chance to see that there's a pedestrian trying to load into the crossing as well. Because right now, if there is an extremely large vehicle parked in the immediate adjacent parallel slot on the incoming traffic, that driver doesn't see it until it's on the crosswalk. And
That's right.
a challenge.
And this
Scary.
photograph here, it actually has some storm drainage in there, does it not,
Oh, yeah,
Richard?
that's some bioretention or bioswales that they have incorporated into it.
Which is great, and of course, we'll look at that when we implement some of this work. The next thing is the flashing crosswalk beacons. So if you look down on the ground, they're almost like speed bumps. This was another recommendation. I wouldn't say that we're the best at stopping at crosswalks in the city. People seem to drive right through them, even with pedestrians in them, so.
You just walk without making eye contact. That's what I recommend doing. But then again, that would be very dangerous,
It is
too.
very dangerous. So this was a recommendation that I thought was good. We've had pushback in the past about, we don't really want these big flashing pedestrian beacons, and so this was recommended. They're not very expensive, and they're very effective. Of course, at night, they're effective as well, but
This
they
is
start
a
flashing.
a slightly raised crosswalk
That's right, and a slightly raised crosswalk
with
with
the,
it.
with the beacons embedded in that rise.
Well, actually, and you also can actually do a core and actually epoxy the beacon into the asphalt surface. And what it has is a prism in the LED, so that as soon as that trip is done, it sends and even in broad daylight, it will get your attention.
that's great.
The LED is very bright, and it's usually an amber white flash, so.
So, really good solution and recommendation.
I've
So-
seen those over in Destin, they work real well, right along the beach road
They
there.
have some in
That's
Pensacola
right.
Beach
Very
now, too,
recognized.
so.
So that's exciting, and it's an easy fix, and will provide a lot of safety for our pedestrians. So we wanted to move a little bit into the parking garage improvements, and this is a separate project, but we did look at it a little bit and talked about it internally as this other process was going on. And the reason is, we wanted to talk about, these grant-funded studies and how they lead to implementation. So we had the Neil Schaefer traffic study that was done here at the city. The Dan Burden study was done for walkability and parking several years ago. And then this PL study we've just done for pedestrian safety. So all three of these together actually helped lead us to apply for this large grant, which will help us with parking garage improvements, but not just with the garage improvements. The whole point is, and I'm going to advance to, this is a part of Dan Burden's study, a photo from that study. The purpose was really to look at more connectivity, walkability, and alternative transportation. And so when we did this study and were able to get this grant for BRAT, from the MPO for a BRAT's hub for connectivity, they allowed us to use a large portion of the grant for improvements to the parking garage and the alleyways that lead people to downtown, because it's really all about connectivity and not driving so many cars. So how do we get people to park and walk? So we thought this was a missing link, was making it a more pleasant experience to actually utilize the garage.
It's welcoming.
Much more welcoming, and we'll show some photos that are kind of fun. These were some just conceptual designs that came out of the study.
I think the whole idea is trying to turn a liability into an asset.
Absolutely.
And really make it something
It's a
where it's
huge
pleasing,
opportunity.
and like we mentioned a minute ago, pleasing to go through, and not, a lot of times parking structures and alleyways are sort of, people don't want to go down them, don't feel safe, don't feel comfortable. We're also talking about some methods there's a policy called crime prevention through environmental design, which has been around since the 70s, but it's really taken off in the past 10 years. And there's certain things you can do to increase, one is like surveillance, feeling that people in their average daily activities can see you, you feel comfortable when that happens. It's called natural surveillance. We're not talking about video cameras, we're talking just having streets on the windows and things like that, where if you're doing something nefarious and you see windows and streets, although you don't see anybody, you'd have perception that you could be seen, which sometimes can deter crime and make a place feel more welcoming and more pleasant to visit. It's a great concept. It's really interesting.
Definitely.
Kind of goes into the psychology of how you feel in certain environments, two blank walls, a dead-end street, all those kind of things. It's really a neat concept, and it really has an effect. I've seen some scholarly studies where they look at some of the crime statistics, and it really is effective. It's really a cool kind of
It
concept.
definitely is.
And Mayor, just so you know, the origins of the grant money is federal transportation. And this is, I think, all of ours first time dealing with them. And it's a little frustrating because we were kind of told that 1st of January we'd have our authorization, and we had a series of meetings, and we were promised by the middle of March. And checking the calendar, they're still a little late on that. We're going to pursue that and see where we're going, because unfortunately, the last meeting, they kind of asked us to stop doing what we're doing and stop pushing forward until you get project authorization. And so we have, and I know that's frustrating that people have a perception nothing's happening, but the people who are paying the bills have kind of informed us, just hold up, you got to wait for us. And I will tell you, I think I may have blown their minds when they were trying to address property ownership, and I had to write about a 3-page description of what is a single tax colony, and the fact that nobody technically owns any property. It is owned by the colony, which is the people that make up the colony. And I think maybe the federal government thinks I'm making something up down here.
It's their first.
And I said, surely you've dealt with this before, but maybe they haven't.
I don't think they have.
Because it's a unique situation. Understand the area that we're talking about, the footprint of the parking garage as well as the alley that leads to it and around it, is property that is technically in the hands of the single tax colony. We've been in constant communication with them, and we have their support. That is currently leased to an entity known as the Fairhope Parking Authority, which is willing to work with the city of Fairhope, who is a
That appoints them.
sub-recipient of the sub-recipient of BRATS, which is a county entity, to get a project funding to building improvements on property that doesn't really belong to us. It doesn't belong to the parking authority, and it belongs to this entity called a single tax colony, and they're still scratching their heads up in Washington or wherever they're dealing with this.
Exactly.
So,
Because basically, they're always concerned is if they invest this grant money, do we as the entity have the ability to maintain it for its serviceable life? Well, the good news is the Parking Authority has a 99-year lease that was originated about 9 years ago. So we got 90 years, and I think that will outlast any shelter, any pavement, any lighting, anything of that nature. And if it doesn't, we won't be here to worry about it at that point in time anyway.
Right.
So.
And I
there
think
were,
that gives-
mostly our kids.
that gives people a good idea. I mean, I'm glad you said all that, because it gives people a good idea about how long it really takes and what's going on behind the scenes when these things are coming to fruition. So it is a long process.
I think it also is an explanation of us being prepared as a city to move forward on a lot of things, but it is waiting on that funding to match up and the timing.
Well, hopefully, I'm optimist any day now. I mean, the good news is, so that we're serious about this is an urban, human scale design project. This is not a real hard infrastructure project. Our lead is going to be a landscape architect, and the civil and the surveying is going to be a subordinate support service of that. Again, I think the mission here is my sweet little 82-year-old mother would not pull up in that alley to go park in the parking garage because just of what Wayne said. We want to make it so inviting at all hours of the day that my 82-year-old mother would be glad to park in there and walk out and go enjoy the community. So, because it's not real inviting right now.
And a lot goes into that too. I mean, we talked about the merchants. We have property owners that line this whole alleyway, so we have to coordinate with all of them. They're community members, there are multiple partners, and multiple committees involved. So it is, and it's ongoing, and there's potentially an art project as part of it, so that's another piece of the puzzle. So and that's just this one parking garage, but there are a lot of other things that you'll see that are part of that as well. The other thing I did want to mention is, and we talked about this before, but I just want to say it again, this project opens us up to applying for sidewalks anywhere within a half-mile walking distance and 3-mile biking distance.
That's right. Multi-use
So-
trails up to 3 miles out and sidewalks up to half mile.
And that was the other impetus for applying for it, is because it does open that up for us, as well as opens up the opportunity for us to access funding for 2 electric vehicle shuttles to shuttle people around the CBD, and the expanded CBD, and we'll talk about that a little bit too.
Richard, does that sidewalk, does it go into lighting as well? Can you, are you have the ability to get lighting for the sidewalks as well with that grant?
They have some caveats in there, like that lighting and landscape for certain projects like sidewalks can't be more than like 10 or 20%. So the short answer is yes, but it is not, it is all tied to the amount of infrastructure
Right.
of the principal purpose
I
of
see.
the funding.
Well, it's
So-
good to know, at least there is some there. And so this brings us to the expansion of the CBD. So this is down Fairhope Avenue, where we have a very large new development coming soon. And I'll let these guys talk about that a little bit more, but we did look at this as part of the study because we knew it was coming. It had already been approved. And the electric shuttles were looked at as part of this too, because some people won't be able to walk that distance, but we still want to encourage them to park in the garage if possible. Do you want to talk about the expansion, Richard?
I'd say a couple of things is, one of the characteristics of our central business district is that you do have on-street parking, and immediately adjacent to that is the walking surfaces, and then immediately adjacent to that is the storefronts. And that gives you that sense of aesthetic of that downtown central business district. So one of the encouragement as this district expands, the first redevelopment is going to try to recreate more of that streetscape aesthetic that's more centrally located in downtown, with the hope as other properties redevelop, then that gets mimicked. So, and part of that is that closing in on the right-of-way and compacting all the activity there is a natural buffer to speed. But we're going to have to look at some opportunities, because right now, we have a relatively large median. We have 2 very oversized travel lanes, and then we have an inconsistent bike lane. And basically, if you look at this picture and you're in your car, you're saying, I am free to go any speed I need to go, because it's straight, it's wide open, and there's nothing that is choking your throughput of that car. And that's kind of a no-no. What we want folks, when they're coming into the central business district, to slow down and to take a more leisurely pace through it. And right now, this road design does not support that.
So we
at
did
all.
look at that,
Yes.
how do we slow people down? And we had Rick give us some recommendations. We all walked out there together, and then after that, we actually got together with the developers of the project and Richard, I think our electric superintendent. We have several people around the table, our bike ped committee, to talk about this too. So just to make sure all the bases are covered and we're doing it right, because once you dig into the ground, I mean, it's a big project and it costs a lot of money. We want to make sure we're addressing everything, stormwater, like you talked about a minute ago, every aspect of the project. But primarily the focus was on pedestrian safety. And so necking down the streets at the entrance to our CBD, our expanded CBD here is going to be a part of that, and some other things which we'll get into. But I wanted, Wayne, can you talk about the
Yeah,
development?
yeah, sure can. This site was primarily a lot of mini warehouses. And so those have been removed, which I think is for downtown. The mini warehouses were probably an underutilization of the property. That I think the property's much more valuable for something else other than mini warehouses. This first slide shows the original plan, which is really more of a suburban type plan you'd find anywhere. And the slide here now on this one shows much more of an urban, of a pedestrian scale plan, where, as Richard mentioned before, you move it closer to the right-of-way, you provide parallel parking, I believe, is there, and you're moving it out to the street. Again, more inviting, more of a pedestrian scale type development. It also, again, slows down traffic and things of that nature, and it is consistent with what we have downtown. this whole effort is trying to encourage reinvestment of some properties that may be underutilized, and this is one of those that I believe it fits that category. So we're very excited about it. Downtown Fairhope's a beautiful place. It's well known throughout the country. But I think what we're trying to do, we could sit here and say, well, it's good. We'll leave it that way. But we're trying to find ways to make it better. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's exciting about this. There's little things you can do here and there to make it better.
And
we
really
never want to rest.
transitioning it to
Right.
the other areas, because
Exactly.
by expanding it, all of this is really walkable.
Right.
And when you really get down to it, that's what,
Right.
how cities grow. You really have to.
Exactly. If you go to any city and you say, wow, this city it's got a really good feel to it, start looking around. I mean, I'd encourage anybody who goes somewhere and you go to a city that you feel really good there, and you look around, you start noticing these things, and I can almost promise you that it's going to be at pedestrian scale. You're going to have pedestrian scale lighting. You're going to have buildings close to the street. You're going to have pedestrian areas to congregate, to sit, all these kind of things. And you go to some cities that don't feel comfortable, and you look around, and when you look wide, and I guarantee you'll see big, vast expanses of blank walls, of non-pedestrian scale
Large parking
type,
lots.
like large parking lots where you got to traverse across the whole parking lot. And I think you'll start seeing those differences. And if you really start taking note of that, you'll start figuring out why certain cities are great cities, great downtowns, and other areas are struggling. And I think we have a good example of where Fairhope's done well, we can do better. We're trying to, all these little things we're trying to do to make it better, to make it a great downtown.
And we're going to get into that. I'm worried a little bit about time. We've got a lot of slides left, but I want to show, we have some illustrations of what you're talking about with pedestrian scale. This was the last recommendation or last area we looked at as part of that study, which was the Johnson Avenue area. And one of the things that, well, I love the phrase, terminal vista?
Terminal Vista. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So Terminal Vista, we did not realize we had a Terminal Vista at the end of Johnson Avenue, but we do, in that beautiful Borum building there. But if you look, the parking is a little bit schizophrenic, and it was recommended, I'm going to go to this slide, making the parking on both sides angled, but not just regular angled, but reverse angled. So that takes us to this next project that we're working on, and this was, it
I
was.
want to ask everybody first to have an open mind.
Have an open mind with reverse angled, and I wonder, how much time do I have? I may not have enough time. We will post this on our website, but there's a short video from Austin, Texas for reverse angled parking. They've been doing it for years. They love it, and they interviewed business owners and tourists and people that live there, and reverse angled parking has so many benefits, and I was a skeptic at first too. Councilman Brown was someone that brought it to us and advocated strongly for it. So we are going to have a parking rodeo for the May Art Walk on Johnson Avenue, and it's going to be a collaboration with the city,
Tell them what that is.
the merchants. We're going to test it out, and I have to talk to Chief first about this. Going to have some golf carts or something we can work with. The Bike Ped Committee wants to actually let people try it. So we'll work out all those details, but I think it's what we hope to have is a place where people can come test it out or watch someone demonstrate. It'll be one or the other.
And I know time
Richard
is
will
short,
demonstrate
but
in a garbage truck.
I do want to give folks some comfort. One, we've identified Johnson, this one block, as a test bed. We have ordered signage. We're going to be orderly in the way that we do it. And understand that if this is one of those things, is that there is some evidence that this is a better way of doing it. And just as about 10 years ago when we started talking about roundabouts, oh goodness, people told us that we were just creating crash-up derbies at intersections. And today, I think most of those that use our roundabouts realize that they work very well, they're very efficient, and you don't spend as much time as an intersection as you used to.
And that's a great segue to the,
And I hope that the reverse angle parking may work out the same. If it doesn't, it's just a little time and a little paint to make it right back like it was.
But also keep in mind that you are backing up when you get out of the parking lot, but you're backing out into usually a lot of traffic, and oftentimes the kids are in the back, and they're the ones that are getting it first. I mean, you're going to back up regardless. To me, it's better to back up where you're not backing up into traffic. So
definitely. And so this was another recommendation. This is outside of the CBD, but we did ask them to look at how do we slow people down coming into Fairhope, period, off of 98? Because I think the behavior starts out there and brings you in down Section Street. But this is not the first time this has been recommended, but it was recommended again that we look at a roundabout at this intersection of Veterans and section where all the roads feed in from 98. And so I think everyone's in agreement, and we have applied for a safety grant. It's the first time that the feds have used a safety grant to fund a roundabout. It's typically used for pedestrian crossings and, yeah, pretty much that's it, pedestrian crosswalks on
Because
major
we're
highways.
innovative.
We're innovative.
It's the
That's
first
why.
time.
It's the first. We like
I mean, that's amazing.
We like first. So they are paying the majority of it, which is awesome, and we will implement it. So hopefully something exciting will go in the center of that, but that's a conversation for another time. And finally, we looked at improving the walking conditions down to the bay, because people downtown, some of the feedback we got from the merchants in this process was everyone's asking, how do I get to the bay? What's the best way to walk? Well, we all walked it together and thought, well, this isn't very pleasant. How do we improve this? And so that was looked at too, and there are recommendations made there. So let's get in quickly to wayfinding, because obviously that was a big point of this. Dan Burden recommended that we put the time it takes to walk on the signs, and we think that's a great idea, because a lot of times people don't realize that it's closer than you thought. 3 types: vehicular, pedestrian, directional, and informational. So we had, here's the group in action, really working hard on the locations. There was a lot of touring around, and then marking. Here is a color-coded map on where these signs could go, and here's the CBD map with the recommendations. And we've got, the planning department is out right now literally walking the streets, looking at these locations and taking the GPS coordinates, and we'll work with Public Works too on obviously on implementing those. And quickly, we wanted to just jump into, as part of wayfinding, municipal branding is a conversation that we have had, and we had some recommendations by the consultants about that. I like this sign because it's, do we want to be Anytown USA, or do we think we're Anytown USA, or do we want a special brand for Fairhope? And this is our municipal seal. There's been a discussion internally and externally with, what's the difference? Municipal seal versus brand. And Wayne and I have talked about this quite a bit, and we've had some research that's been done on it, and I've read studies, and different people in his department have read studies about it. The municipal seal is that's your official seal. It's on your letterhead, your official letterhead, your city buildings and things like that. But a brand is more like this. It's something that your community has come together to work on and create. They identify with it. It's used for tourism and economic development. It's more of a marketing tool. So there's Mobile's, Gulf Shores has this, and you're hard pressed to find their municipal seal anywhere now, because they're kind of using this everywhere. There's South Walton, and their tourism department uses the Visit South Walton logo altogether. So they see it as a marketing tool. And then Orange Beach has been starting to use this. I think they were using it at a tournament this weekend on T-shirts. Here's an idea of how branding is used on some signage. This one is Ocean Springs. If you look at the top, that's $16.99 at the top of the sign. That's the brand that they chose. And then the consultant, who had never been here before, was like, well, I see this thing everywhere, this pier thing. I think that's y'all's brand. I see this everywhere. So I wanted to make sure we put that in. We have a few bike racks that this is used on now that are about to be installed. I think they're on the council agenda for tonight. And then the consultants did this. This is how you could use a brand. And I'm not saying that's not the brand, but they were trying to come up with examples for us to see. And this is a process we'll have to go through with the community. And finally, and Wayne, you can speak to this. Richard, you brought it up too. We're working on putting together a vernacular guide. This is another opportunity that came out. Wayne, do you want to talk about the scale?
I do, just real quick. I know we're limited on time. You have what's called pedestrian scale. As you can see, the light fixture on the left is 18 to 30 feet tall, very large, probably out of context in a pedestrian area. The one on the right is a pedestrian scale fixture, probably 12 to 16 feet, 15 feet, something like that. And as you can see from the diagram, it's a much more size that's in concert with a typical person.
And this is Fairhope now, and here's another city that's more human scale. Our CBD is using these taller lights, which would be more appropriate, maybe.
Right.
further.
I mean, they light up the area, but I think we could have the same amount of lighting with something that's more pedestrian scale, and it also looks better.
And we're looking at that for our street signs as well. And this is, our current signs are the green
On the left?
signs on the left, and on the right, we're looking at something that's more appropriate. This will all be part of that vernacular.
And this would be primarily downtown.
Yeah, the CBD, exactly. And so here are just photos of.
Yeah, these photos, if you look closely, you see what I would consider a pedestrian scale lighting in the middle with the flag banner on it. Really nice street, looks very well. If you look at that and compare it to a Cobra size, the big 30-foot Cobra headlight, this is very, very different and distinct from that.
And we've got 2 more slides left, and
This one
we'll
kind
wrap
of
it up.
incorporates a little bit everything, the street sign, and also if you look in the far distance, you see some of the, again, the pedestrian scale lighting and so forth.
And then this last one, it's just a different style.
Yeah, different style. You see the light in the left corner of the photo there, and you can see that's a different kind of different light and different kind of context. And again, I think the lighting would be dependent on what people want in the city.
And Mayor, from this photo, the neat thing is you see the light, you see the waste receptacle, and you can see a bench. And they are vernacularly complementary of each other.
That's right.
And from a public works director standpoint, to go through the process of branding and selection, having the city council kind of adopt a vernacular, when we go to do a retrofit of a roadway, we know exactly what kind of benches we're going to put in, what kind of waste receptacles, what kind of light fixtures, and it takes all that guesswork out, because if every project, this architect suggests this and this engineer suggests this, you end up with a hodgepodge. But
And that's
then
what we have.
It's not going to happen overnight, but it's every time we have to replace a street sign, we update it with the chosen decorative, and all of a sudden, that classic part of Fairhope becomes a distinct district that has that consistency that ties it all together, that
The character.
and preserving that character. It's already got, we're so blessed with such natural, God-given character. It is just taking that, and, especially if we can be more and more successful going underground lighting and having, the human scale fixtures and things of that nature, it's just transformative. Just as whoever made the decision about the paver program, that paver has slowly started tying all of downtown together because there's that consistency of look.
Right.
And so,
Making it from good to great, that's what we're
Yeah.
trying to do.
And we can reuse the lighting elsewhere in the city, which is great. So we won't be wasting any materials. So, what's next? The next step is we're going to be working on implementing all of this over time. And as Richard said, some of this will come before council. We'll have options. The beauty of it is internally, between all of our departments, we have a lot of expertise and experience in all these areas. So we'll get the best recommendations possible based on that expertise.
It's a really, really good update. We have about 5 minutes or less, and we're going to.
Well,
Richard
we've got a
Peterson
couple of
and Tom.
things going on. We did receive 8 of the requests for qualifications from consultants for the Phase 1 of the wastewater system improvement projects that we're looking at. Richard was gracious enough to help me score those qualifications, and we're making recommendations to look at consultants for each of the 5 projects we targeted for that first phase. And hopefully by the next council meeting, we'll be at a point where we can start negotiating with these consultants for those projects. The tank painting project is going slow. We're not, can't say it any other way. We're looking at contingency issues for if we get into a dry summer. We're going to try to look at, I've got David Powell in the GIS system, and I've got Jason Jarvis plotting meter routes and customer numbers, and we're trying to get some growth, or not growth, but usage projections, so we can start looking at maybe a very crude model of the system and see how we can work the entire distribution system into serving the needs that we may be short on if we do get into a situation where that tank provided some relief to the production side of the system. But we're going to find out more about that, and we'll try to report on that later. Right now, the areas that we would probably look at trying to get some volunteer reduction in either landscape irrigation or usage would be north of the system in the Rock Creek area right now, where we do have a booster pump, and we're experimenting with how we can manage that booster pump to accommodate this time. And hopefully we'll be able to work with the contractor to get some partial acceptance of that project where we won't be short too long, but it does look like we're going to be running into some problems with that. This week is the last week Dan McCory is going to be here. Unfortunately, Friday we found out that my friends and colleagues at Riviera Utilities have found a manager of their control center, and that manager is going to be Joe Walchina, who is our superintendent of the electric department. That's a big blow to us, but we'll struggle to get through it. We're looking at some different organization charts, and we're looking to see whether we need to do any type of reorganization or whether we can start. And of course, we want to try to promote from within, and we want to try to get people up in those positions. But you know, when we first did the budget last year, we talked about some engineering department capability that we still need, and whether we can merge some of the organization into having that capability or not, I'm not sure. But we're going to be working on that pretty heavy in the next week or so.
I'm going to be talking to council too, because we're going to have a special meeting to go over the police department organizational chart, and the next one will be utilities, because it is just in dire need of so much expertise.
But that's where we are right now, and
huge,
we're working as hard as we can to keep the citizens and the customers satisfied. That's getting
But
more and more difficult with time.
The reality is that the talent we do have right now is stretched.
Yes.
And it's hard.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
April, another busy month coming up in the rec department with softball and soccer tournaments. And the regular league play keeps everything going real strong through May. And then the tennis center, Mike Ford Tennis Center, they've got adult and junior league play, the doubles and singles last month and again through this month. And the junior tennis team starts up with the 10U and 18U. Tomas is also getting together with some plans for summer camps for youth and adults. And then out at the golf course, they've got 4 tournaments lined up this month, along with the regular Wednesdays and Saturday bullpens. And Ladies Club Championship is today and tomorrow out there going on right now. And then Jeff's crew is continuing to get the traps in better shape. They're going to do an overall on the big one on number 2, and we've just had issues with that, you know, with the way it looks and plays, and so we're just going to start from scratch with that. And then down at the marina, the new hire started today, a part-time person, got his orientation done and worked out real well. And then the seawall down there starts the 18th of this month, so we'll just keep moving forward on going towards the fuel tank.
Thank you. And that's all for our Directors Roundtable. Thank you all.